story this evening, of course, is the Bharat Biotech story. And let me tell you where it began from. On the 1st of January, the government of India and the regulators gave emergency use approval to two vaccines for COVID-19. One is the AstraZeneca Oxford Serum Institute of India vaccine called Covishield, and the other is COVAXIN, made by Bharat Biotech, an Indian pharmaceutical company which has been working with the ICMR to produce its vaccine. Now, the approval to Bharat Biotech's COVAXIN raised quite a few eyebrows. Some politicians got into it as well, but importantly, so did experts. Their question was a simple one. Why has this vaccine candidate got emergency approval when its Phase 3 trials are not over yet? So clinical trials, when you're testing a new vaccine, take place in certain phases. There's Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. Phase 3 is crucial because it looks at efficacy on how much the vaccine works. It's a human trial on a larger number of people, and it also has a clearer picture of side effects. Now, the world over, and in large parts of the world really, for vaccine candidates like Moderna and Pfizer, etc., Phase 3 trials and some of the interim data at least was available before they got emergency approval by respective regulators of countries. In India, this is the first case so far as COVID-19 is concerned that this approval has been given without Phase 3 data, and a lot of consternation was raised over this. So today, Dr. Krishna Ella, the CMD of Bharat Biotech, held a press conference to answer detractors and said some very interesting things in it, which has raised a few more questions than even before. Let me first play out for you what Dr. Ella said on efficacy of his vaccine.
Emergency license gazette notification of 2019 gives an opportunity for me to get emergency license. When a law provides me, why not I? Right now, I ask a simple question. My Indian company, I don't want to name that company, they have done 1,200 people. They don't have Phase 3 data. They have only Phase 2, 100 people immunogenicity data. Did they publish any paper? Did they publish any paper? But they got license, no, in India? How did they get license? On a Phase 2, 100 people immunogenicity data, they don't have even 1,200 people safety data also. Whereas I have 25,000 people safety data in this country. I have 1,000 people of immunogenicity data in this country. So when other company got emergency license based on the UK data, not on the Indian data. Indian data only 100 people data, nothing else. And I'm still, I have to appreciate the drug controller because to give a permission so that the public health is benefited in the country, in the large interest. The emergency license is a provision given to us. And after Phase 2, we can get the license.
All right, so Dr. Ella not only defended the emergency approval to his vaccine, saying that it's very much within the purview of the law because as he explains it, his vaccine is based on a platform that has been used very widely and his animal trials were very successful. But he also took this opportunity to hit out at the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, questioning some of their methods during clinical trials. Listen in.
You asked a question, UK AstraZeneca clinical trial, whether 60%, 70%, 90%, which one is the clinical trial efficacy of that country? Nobody knows. The one says 60%, one says 70%, another one says 90%. One says high dose, or low dose, high dose. If I had done that type of clinical trial in India, drug control of India would have shut down the company because we have to have three parameters in a product quality. Number one, product quality, certificate of analysis. That means certificate of analysis means if I say 6 microgram in my vaccine, I should have 6 microgram in my vaccine. I say now after my doing a clinical trial, then second step is required method validation. That means whatever I'm putting 6 microgram is validated by each individual in the company, each different parameters. We looked at all the direction, it's still stable as 6 microgram. That's a standards practices. And then our national testing protocol approval. 3 steps are involved. If I say 6 microgram, oh, I'm sorry, I've done a clinical trial 3 microgram. I missed it. So it's called English word called serendipity. I don't know what is the meaning of serendipity until this now. Now I understand the British language of serendipity. Serendipity means honest mistake. That means I can drive in a car and kill somebody and then say I can say serendipity. Honest mistake. If I have done that type of clinical trial in India, my drug controller would have shut down this company on a quality issues. This quality, you said 6 microgram was not there in your clinical trial. I would have got 5, 6 PAL case in India. And National Human Rights Commission would have said, I have given consent to give a 6 microgram vaccine, but how come I've been given 3 microgram in my clinical trial?
All right, so believe it or not, the conversation about the 2 new vaccines has now turned into which is better, which is not, and serious questions raised by one vaccine maker over another. So quite a strange situation we find ourselves in as we fight to roll out the vaccine. To speak more about what's going on and actually understand beyond the language and all of that, the basis of it all. How are the vaccines different? Are there really big concerns about the kind of approvals that have been given? And are those concerns or those questions really even valid? To speak on this, I'm joined now by Dr. Ramanan Laxminarayan. I'm joined by Anant Bhan and Dr. Suneela Garg. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us today. Dr. Ramanan, let me begin with your take on what we've heard today. First things first. Some of the defense that you heard from Bharat Biotech on questions of why they got an emergency approval without phase 3 trial data. The basic defense is that, look, it's within the law. The 2019 Gazette allows for this. And it's also based on the fact that our inactive virus platform has been used very widely.
Right. So, I have to say I have a lot of respect for Dr. Ella. He's a good friend, and they don't do things on the fly. They were responsible for introducing a rotavirus vaccine, 116E, tremendous exercise, and he's a serious vaccine manufacturer and does it for all the right reasons. So you have to first understand this is not some fly-by-night operator. He's putting his reputation on the line here with whatever he's doing. There's also more to this emergency authorization than the public may understand, which is that it doesn't really allow them to go out and vaccinate everyone with that emergency authorization. It's something which is far more restricted. It will have to be used in the context of tightly controlled trials. And I don't want to get into the Bharat Biotech versus Serum Institute conversation because I don't think that's a productive place to get into. I think India needs maybe 10 manufacturers, not just 1 or 2. So I don't think it's an either or. We have 1 billion people to vaccinate here, so this is not the line of conversation we should be pursuing at all. Is there a legitimate role for a second or a third vaccine? Absolutely. Is there a role for COVAXIN to be deployed around in other countries? Absolutely. Does Bharat Biotech, like Serum, have a strong reputation for producing vaccines, but also for vaccine innovation? Absolutely. So I think that's really where we should go after this with. And I know there have been concerns that have been raised about this emergency authorization without the phase 3 data being available. And that is definitely of some concern. But I believe that this has been done with fairly tight safeguards to make sure it's only used in very tight purposes. This is not going to be part of the vaccination program tomorrow until this phase 3 trial data actually does come out. And we have to remember that that is the condition under which it has been approved. It is not a free-for-all where it will be used for vaccinating the population, at the very earliest.
Why give the approval?
What's that?
No, then why give an approval in the first place, Dr. Ramanan? Then why, give an approval in the first place if it's not going to really be rolled out? What do you mean by trial conditions? It's not very clear to people what you mean by that it will be given out in trial conditions.
If you'd heard the press conference,
yeah.
So if you heard the press conference, you would also be confused. This is just my take on it, and I'm sure Dr. Garg and Dr. Bhan have their takes on it as well. I think, and this is just my personal opinion, that there was probably some pressure to put a vaccine out there as having been approved that was a made in India vaccine and it developed in India sort of a vaccine. And I think there's some of that pressure that might have pushed the COVAXIN out really to be, sort of quote unquote emergency approved at this point in time, because the other vaccine also, as Dr. Ella says, has challenges that hasn't been tested widely in India. The trial data have come from outside of the country, and it has been approved in the UK. And of course, India needs a vaccine out there right now, but it was not a developed in India vaccine. So there might be some element of sort of vaccine development nationalism also coming in here. But that said, I am reasonably confident that the way in which these vaccines will actually get rolled out will be done responsibly. I was involved in the setting up the adverse events following immunization program in India, 5-6 years back. And I can tell you, we have a strong system for doing that, which is if there are adverse events following the rollout of the vaccination, there is a strong system to pick it up, to investigate these and report these back. So overall, we have a reasonably competent program at this point in time. And I wouldn't worry too much about this language of the emergency authorization right now. I think it sort of flies a flag a little bit and then opens a door for the COVAXIN to enter the fray. But I would love to hear what my co-panelists have to say as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Anant Bhan, let me ask you to come in on everything that we've seen, say, in the last 24 to 48 hours. And it's been quite a blitz of information and occurrences. First, the emergency approval has come. First things first, should there be any valid concern that one vaccine candidate has been approved essentially on the basis of successful animal trials and because of its platform? We don't really know what's come out of the phase 3 trials. Is that of any concern at all, and should that be of any concern at all?
Thanks, Tamanna. So I think, what's at the heart of this discussion is what the standards are being applied and what is known about those standards. So a few weeks ago, the health secretary had gone on record and said the two kind of conditions in which we would give such an approval is either if there is a foreign regulator who's given approval and then you have local bridging data. So that's sort of what Covishield probably is trying to do, or you have local efficacy data. Now, the problem is on both these counts, we don't have much information available. The fundamental issue I have right now is an issue of a lack of transparency and opacity. There are decisions being taken, but no rationale being provided in the public domain, the data not being provided, no reasoning as to why you've come to this conclusion, how did you come to that conclusion. If you look at global best practices, the US FDA livecast both its Pfizer and Moderna decisions. When they did give approval, and all of those decisions were out in the public domain in terms of what were the kind of questions, clarifications asked, what were the concerns which were expressed and how those were responded to. At the least, what we want is an explication, a detailing of what these conditions are which they talk about. What do you mean by regulatory conditions, clinical trial mode? This kind of language we've not seen before. If they're referring to a 2019 Gazette notification, it still needs detailing, because if I am someone who is to receive the vaccine, I need to understand what does that even mean. Does that mean I need to consent? Does that mean that there'll be an ethics committee providing oversight? Does that mean that there'll be a principal investigator? Does that mean that this is only going to be an expanded version of a phase 3? Does it mean that there will be adverse event reporting, but also compensation or medical care provided as is done in a clinical trial? So maybe it's all in there, but why not provide it in the public domain? I mean, the pandemic is no reason to hide anything, right? It's all the more reason to be more transparent. In fact, that is what is expected even from WHO. When they talk about emergency use listing, one of the things they talk about is enhanced transparency. So that is what all of us are seeking. No one here is questioning Indian science. No one here is questioning Indian vaccine companies. We are all extremely proud of them. And I think, they played a really great role in global health and saving millions of lives. Let us all celebrate that, but I don't think that saves the regulator from having to answer these questions. And I hope that they will come forward. We haven't yet started vaccinating. There is still time. Please come out with those clarifications that will help allay a lot of these concerns which are being expressed.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Suneela Garg, what is your take? On the one hand, you have regulators coming and saying, and a lot of them have spoken to ET now today, and we'll run off some of those excerpts for you as well. So they are coming and saying that, look, the best minds in the country have looked at this data, it's fine, trust in us because we say so. And then you have a set of people saying that, hey, that's just not good enough, we want to look at the data, we want that sort of transparency. Is it fair to ask for that right now? Because we are in times which have no template. We're discussing scientific terms on an everyday basis, lay people are talking about the vaccine. Do we need to know more?
I think, first of all, I need to clear some points that you see from the scientific front, we are well aware of the fact that we are in the midst of pandemic with lots of lives gone. And India also is over 1 crore, is having more than 1 crore cases with though less mortality. But then at this point of time, we are looking at vaccines which are more than one, number one. Number two is that when we look at the whole debate was about the Bharat Biotech vaccine also. When I looked at closely at phase 1, phase 2 of the trial, if we look at the phase 1 trial, instead of recruiting 50 or 60 individuals, we recruited over 300 individuals. And we looked at the safety part of it, and which is well within the public domain. And in phase 2 again, and these are, remember, they are the healthy volunteers. In phase 2 again, we recruited people and we had a total data is about of 1,000 people, and that paper is going to be published very soon. Another thing is that out of 26,000 individuals in phase 3, we have already recruited more than 23,000 individuals, which is a big thing in itself. And this trial is completely being conducted in India. That makes it even more stronger. We are looking at Indian population. And another plus point is that we have in this trial taken, children who are about 12 years of age. We have taken comorbid. That means we are taking the real life situations. So that's where we have to look at this. And on top of it, we need to look at that now we have got a mutant strain also. So we will be looking at a vaccine also, which will address the concern of mutation, and that mutation is going to affect children. So if we have a vaccine which is fairly safe till now, which has got no major side effects in, you see, if we look at AstraZeneca vaccine also, that had also, the trial was halted 2 to 3 times. But then again, it was proved by the regulators that, okay, it is, it is not related to the vaccine and all. But then we were concerned about the cases of transverse myelitis, which was said that it is due to multiple sclerosis and all that. But if we look at Bharat Biotech till now, and approximately looking at 24,000 individuals so far, the efficacy, when we are looking at even phase 3, we are looking at the seroconversion part of it also in the different groups of people. And approximately, this will come out to be approximately the efficacy will be about 60%. And another thing which we have to keep in mind is that all of these vaccines have been given emergency authorization in different countries. That means they can be stopped anytime if there is any major side effect. Another thing which we have to keep in mind is that we will be entering into post-marketing surveillance, which will actually tell us what is the effectivity of the vaccine. Now, earlier when we began with whether it was Moderna, whether it was Pfizer, or whether it is AstraZeneca, they all began with the fact that we will be having 50 to 60%. Over a period of time, we got to know that, the whole thing is, the total immunity which is conferred is, or total effectivity is about 90%. Now, we are looking at this vaccine and we are not dealing with small numbers. We are dealing with numbers of about 24,000 plus. And already we are in phase 3 with different groups of individuals.
Ma'am. Yes.
Yeah, let me just complete.
Yes, Dr. Garg, if I may come in, the question that people are asking is a very simple one. Yes, ma'am.
But it is not that simple. The way if we go with this kind of, I will say that this is not a responsible communication, because on one hand, we are looking for an emergency backup vaccine where we are in the midst of a situation where we are getting mutant strains. Today, we have got up till now 34 individuals who have tested positive for mutant strain. We have to keep overall the whole situation into its perspective. India needs another vaccine, maybe not only 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. We are a big country, so we have to look in that perspective. So this is only an emergency vaccine post our first vaccine, which is already available.
What people are asking,
it will be available soon. You see, within a month or so, this trial will be over.
With the Bharat Biotech vaccine, ma'am, if I may please ask my question. Yes, ma'am. If you may please allow me to ask my question, because lay people don't understand all of these things. That's why it's important to just lay it down simply sometimes. So please bear with me. The simple question that people are asking is that should we have waited for phase 3 data to go ahead. Now, Dr. Ella in his press conference today says that we will have clearer data by the month of Feb. He says that we will perhaps have the initial efficacy data in another week. In fact, the question about why nothing has been published in peer-reviewed journals, he says you will see two articles being published in peer-reviewed journals by January 10th. So the simple question people are asking is that what was the point of this emergency approval if we are still going to have to do this as if it's a clinical trial and we have to wait for it to roll out in any case? What really did we do here with Bharat Biotech? Is the COVAXIN going to be available soon or not? It's something that no one has clarity on even today.
Yeah.
Dr. Bhan, you're going to take up this question, or I take up this question?
Dr. Suneela, that question's for you.
Yeah. Okay.
It's for you.
So
it's for you, Dr. Suneela.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm trying to convince it. I'm trying to put it in a very simple manner that here is a trial which is going on, and here is a time when we need a backup vaccine very urgently. When you said that what was the need, this is where you see, and again you see, it is not that nothing is in public domain. Phase 1, which talked about safety, is already in public domain. Phase 2, which has been put up to the expert review committee, all the documents are in place. That is another important thing which you have to keep in mind. And phase 3 is where we have large data of approximately 24,000 individuals is also there with no side effects at all. Even if there's tomorrow, let's say if I have to use this vaccine in emergency situation as a backup vaccine, we get large surge of cases, we have to be prepared for that. And then again, it's a indigenous vaccine, which has got, again, it is not something without any scientific, we can't say it is without a scientific backup. We have a whole team of ICMR closely monitoring National Institute of Virology, and that's the first institute which has
Nobody
also
is
come
saying,
up with
few things that we should make clear.
Yeah, so we have to say that
few
it's
things
a
that we
safe
should make clear.
vaccine.
No one is questioning or running down the might of Indian science or Indian scientists. Wonders have been done. The fact that if there is a vaccine candidate which has largely and wholly been clinically tested and tried on Indian people will be a big thumbs up, because that would have clearer data as far as we're concerned. The intent is not to beat down an Indian company, as Dr. Ella has also said again and again. The idea is to just know that do we know enough. Anant Bhan, I think the real concern is, and especially if you have Bharat Biotech saying that there were some loopholes in the way AstraZeneca did its trial, and then the others were saying that should Bharat Biotech have got approvals, then you have anyway a set of people who don't know whether the vaccine is safe or not. Does all of this murkiness fuel that frenzy?
Yeah, I mean, the solution is quite simple, right? The solution is transparency, whether it's Covishield or COVAXIN, just put out the facts in the public domain, put out the rationale, put out the data that you're looking at. If other regulators can do it, then there is no reason to have an excuse around, say, IP, right? So what were the decisions? What were they based on? What was the data which went into those decisions? And what do you mean by these conditions that you put in? Provide more details and issue a clarification. If we don't do that, then it will fuel this kind of confusion, anxiety, probably, this feeling that perhaps I should wait, perhaps I should not take a vaccine if it's available. Why create that kind of a confusion for anyone, any stakeholder, a potential recipient, a clinician who has to make that decision? It's just not a healthy place to be. I think, just being more honest and upfront about all of this decisions would be very, very helpful. And as I said, there is still time. The regulator can have an extensive press conference, put out a note over the next couple of days and help clarify. And that hopefully will end some of this uncertainty which we are seeing, which is leading to these debates, which, can easily be solved by providing more context.
Okay, that's an important point. The onus also falls on the regulator to explain, not just the vaccine makers who are coming out and talking about their side of the story. Dr. Ramanan, you mentioned in the beginning of the show that the real question is how many vaccine candidates can India have and how quickly? Do you think that's what's really important, to get more and more successful vaccine candidates out there into the market so we can cover a larger population quicker and with more safety?
Well, having more candidates does a couple of things. One is, of course, the manufacturing that you're able to get more of these out. The second is also it's a negotiation game, right? Because if you have only one candidate, you don't have much room for price negotiation. If you have two or three, then there's room for price negotiation. And you have to keep in mind that COVID vaccination for India is an extremely expensive enterprise. Even at $220 a dose, at 440, that is vastly more than what India can really afford, even though these seem like very cheap prices, because you multiply everything that we're talking about by 2 billion if we're vaccinating 1 billion people. So these are very large numbers that exceed our health budget. So I think what must be playing in the minds of the authorities is how do we bring the price of these vaccines down? Of course, India has also made commitments to other developing countries to be able to help them out with their vaccines, because the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are just not feasible for most of the world. Most of the world is going to depend on the Russian Sputnik vaccine or the Chinese vaccine or one of the Indian vaccines. And I would say at this point in time, given India's reputation on vaccine manufacture, Indian vaccines would be considered to be superior to the other countries' options. Also because I think the way in which this is happening is helpful. I do agree with Dr. Bhan, which is that having this process be transparent. What I was doing earlier was trying to guess at why they put this emergency authorization out, which I fully agree. There was no need to have done this now. They could have done this 3 weeks or 4 weeks from now and the same effect, because the vaccine is not going to be available to someone off the shelf tomorrow just because they said emergency authorization today. It would have helped build that confidence both within the country and outside in our process. It would have certainly helped everyone with having a clarity on when to expect the vaccines, because I have people calling and saying, these vaccines have been approved, can I get one now? I think laying that expectation is a very, very important thing to do, because people are frankly tired of being inside and under lockdown and under a stressful situation with respect to COVID. So I think the bottom line is we need far better communication on what the pathway is. And this is not the time to play, some sort of, we also have an Indian vaccine, and this is not the time to do it. I think India will be a critical part of the global vaccination piece. That just goes without saying.
Absolutely. And in fact, there will be a number of nations also depending on India for availability of a cheap and affordable and safe vaccine. So let's remember that. We have a responsibility to large parts of the world as well.